Chapter 1. The Fall of Eldermere. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest of LOTR. Aran Galados moved silently through the underbrush, his bow in hand and a quiver of arrows slung across his back. The forest was alive with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. But Aran's focus was sharp, his blue eyes scanning the terrain for signs of game. He had been tracking a stag for hours, its hoofprints leading him deeper into the woods. Hunting was more than a means of survival for Aran. It was a way to connect with the land, to feel the pulse of the forest, and lose himself in its rhythms. But today, something felt off. The air was too still, the birdsong too sparse. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Aran paused, his instincts prickling. He crouched low, listening. In the distance, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold, the faint echo of screams. His heart raced. Eldermere. Without a second thought, Aran turned and sprinted toward the village, his bow bouncing against his back. The forest blurred around him as he ran, his boots pounding against the earth. The screams grew louder, mingled with the clash of steel and the roar of flames. When he burst into the clearing, the sight before him froze him in his tracks. Eldermere was burning. Thick black smoke billowed into the sky, choking the air. Crimson-clad soldiers swarmed the village, their armor glinting in the firelight. They moved with ruthless efficiency, cutting down anyone who stood in their way. Villagers fled in every direction, their cries of terror drowned out by the soldiers' war cries. Aran's eyes darted to his home, a small cottage on the edge of the village. Flames licked at its roof, and his parents were nowhere to be seen. "No!" he shouted, his voice breaking. He knocked an arrow and let it fly, striking a soldier in the shoulder. The man stumbled, and Aran quickly fired again, this time hitting his mark. But there were too many of them. Dozens, maybe hundreds. "Aran," a voice called. He turned to see Keela, a childhood friend, running toward him. Her face was streaked with soot and tears. "They're taking everyone. We have to go." Aran hesitated, his eyes scanning the chaos. "My parents. They're gone," Keela said, her voice trembling. "Please, Aran, we have to run." Before he could respond, a group of soldiers spotted them and charged. Aran grabbed Keela's hand and pulled her into the forest, their footsteps pounding against the ground. Behind them, the soldiers gave chase, their shouts growing louder. They ran toward the hills of LOTR, a rugged expanse of rocky terrain that bordered the village. Other villagers joined them, their faces itched with fear. Aran led the way, his mind racing. If they could reach the hills, they might have a chance to hide. But the soldiers were relentless. Arrows whizzed past them, and one by one, the villagers fell. Keela stumbled, and Aran yanked her to her feet, his grip tight. "Keep going," he urged. They reached the base of the hills, but the soldiers were closing in. Aran turned and fired another arrow, buying them a few precious seconds. He and Keela scrambled up the rocky slope, their hands scraping against the stone. At the top of the hill, Aran looked back. Eldermere was a blazing inferno, its once peaceful streets now a battlefield. His heart ached with grief and rage, but there was no time to mourn. "This way," he shouted, leading the survivors along the ridge. But the soldiers had surrounded them. Aran and the villagers were trapped, their backs to the edge of the hill. Below them, the Silver Stream River roared, its waters churning violently. Aran knocked his last arrow and aimed at the nearest soldier. "Stay back," he warned. The soldier laughed, a cruel mocking sound. "You're out of options, boy. Before Aran could react, an arrow struck Keela in the chest. She gasped, her eyes wide with shock, and fell to her knees. Keela! Aran dropped his bow and caught her as she collapsed. Aran, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry. Her eyes closed, and she went still. Aran's vision blurred with tears. He looked up, his grief turning to fury. The soldiers advanced, their weapons raised. With a roar, Aran charged at them, but a blow to the head sent him reeling. He stumbled backward, his foot slipping on the edge of the hill. For a moment, he hung in the air, his arms flailing. Then he fell. The world spun as he tumbled down the rocky slope, his body battered by the jagged stones. He hit the river with a splash, the icy water swallowing him whole. The current dragged him under, tossing him like a ragdoll. Aran struggled to breathe, his lungs burning. He slammed into a rock, the impact knocking the air from his chest. Darkness crept into the edges of his vision as the river carried him into an underground cave. When he finally came to a stop, he was barely conscious. His body was broken, his strength gone. He lay on the cold stone floor of the cave, the sound of rushing water echoing around him. But then, a soft glow caught his eye. Aran reached for it, his fingers trembling. As his hand closed around the shard, a surge of warmth spread through his body. His wounds began to heal, his strength returning. For the first time in hours, Aran felt hope. But he also felt something else, a connection, a pull towards something greater. The shard had chosen him, and his life would never be the same.